talked to anyone about that. So good to get you
You
guys'
got the
opinion.
you got the release. You got to release the one thing that you've always wanted to say right now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right. So, all right. Let me know when y'all are ready.
I'm ready to go.
I'm good.
Alrighty. Okay. In three. Okay. In three, two, one. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fighting Roundtable. Hope you guys are being safe all around the world. My name is Dante Analysis, and here joining me today is Monique Sarah from Unwrapped Sports, Unwrapped Combat Sports, I believe, correct?
Yeah,
All right.
both
All right.
actually.
Well, welcome back. And joining us today, a new guest, ParryPunch MMA. Welcome, dude.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Be sure to follow them on Twitter at Monique Yip and ParryPunch MMA, respectively. So today we're going to be talking about secrecy in the fighting world. Yeah, I want to have a lot of fun with this conversation because, in light of recent events with UFC 249 being canceled, there was a lot of things being taking place at behind closed doors, and he was trying to get it to one location. But apparently, I think it was like a California governor or some kind of a official like let out the word what the UFC was doing, and so that's how ESPN and Disney shut it down. So it was like the cat's out of the bag, and then it completely crumbled everything they were trying to do. So I want to talk a little bit about like the I guess the kind of business UFC is and how it is like a result of its humble beginnings of and just the nature of their business and like trying to understand like where it comes from and why they want to do something like this.
Okay.
So when I was watching the documentary about I guess the three letters when he was doing business with the Fertitas, yeah, I was looking at how they were trying to find some way to shoehorn MMA into anything, whether it was a cooking show or anything like that. And I saw that uh, they had to do a lot of things, I guess, behind closed doors, or like try to like put up a front in order to get things on the air. Um, and it just makes me wonder like how I guess they understand the nature of what business they were trying to do and trying to get it I guess up on its feet. So my question for you just to start things off is I guess what are your feelings towards how secret and covert UFC is trying to be, and how did you observe I guess the history of the UFC considering its practices during its humble beginnings?
Okay. I don't know, Perry. Do you have or Perry Punch? I should say, do you have a opinion on this first? Do you want to start first? I kind of just let people that are new to the show to let their opinion first, and then I can piggyback onto it.
Okay. Yeah, so basically, as far as like their practices and like when they first were kind of promoting the UFC on the ground level, um, I think that that's part of the reason like that was like the whole um how do I say this? Like that was like revolutionary in a way. It was different. Like how you said they were going in and trying to squeeze their name in cooking channel commercials or things like that. I even saw like a quote from Bob Arum when he did a interview with Hawani, like
Mm-hmm.
way back in the beginning of the UFC, and he was saying like he couldn't give the UFC a compliment as far as like what MMA is, but he was giving a lot of props to the Fertitas and Dana White, saying that like they're even copying some of their advertising models, and they're like he had never seen anything like it. So as far as like the way they promoted the UFC, I think that they were like different, and what like by being different, that's why they're still here today, because it's like that was their way to like pave their way into this kind of market. And then
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I was gonna be
Oh,
like,
okay.
I got an idea, but like you keep going in terms of like I guess promoting it originally, and I guess
Okay.
you're trying to move into more modern times and what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I mean, as far as like nowadays, Dana like is like a loose cannon with his opinions on the media and stuff. Even during like interviews with ESPN, he like doesn't shy away from slamming the MMA media, and it like kind of groups in with Brett Okamoto and Helwani and stuff like that. But he's kind of like a loose cannon with it now, and I think the secrecy was a little warranted because like as um Dante said earlier, like the cat got out of the bag with the California commissioner, and then that's what kind of ultimately led to Disney getting a hold of Dana White and asking him to shut down the whole event. So I think as far as like over the last like month or so, I think the secrecy has been warranted because Dana almost saw that like if people were to know the whole truth and get a hold of it, then the higher ups at ESPN and other media people are gonna kind of slam his approach, I guess, or his way of like carrying on the fights.
Right.
But
Yeah,
that's what
I
I'd have to
mean,
say about it.
Yeah.
great points, Perry. Did you want to say something, Greg, before I jump on?
Sure. Yeah. It was just. I was just like really. It was kind of I guess scary how I guess Disney got involved. Yeah, because it's like a running joke of like Disney is like the all seeing eye, and like Disney is like taking over the world of entertainment, and to see them get their hands on it, and to think that the likes of Disney could even have a say, like how Dana White could run his business. Yeah, it's kind of it's really inspiring, and it's really nice to see how the UFC has evolved. But the evolution is at what cost? I'll delve into that a little bit later. But yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on that, Monique.
Okay, so again, great points by both of you. It's different, right? Because we're talking about different things. The first part of the question was about like the evolution of how they promoted themselves. Like you said, Perry Punch, it was all about being different. It's all about being like in different markets too. It's all about like diving your nose into different markets, and that's how you became what the number one promotion now in MMA, right? And at the same time now,
Exactly.
right? And then now, what Greg said, at what cost? And like, I'm not gonna say anything bad about Dana White because he actually follows me on Twitter. However, I will say that it's different. The marketing, like how they promote themselves right now, is totally different. Like Perry Punch said, like Dana's super in your face about a lot of things. Super in your face to the media. Super in your face about the fighters, and then the fighters themselves are really kind of just being really vocal. Back and forth. You've seen those kind of rivalry. Beef talking. Shit talking kind of
Mm-hmm.
like conversations. And I think that now that's the way they promote themselves, and it's kind of in a way it's sad because it's like, okay, I understand it's business first. Like when I think of UFC right now, I think it's always business first, and the show must go on.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and that reminds me of a time where they had to, I guess, they had to do it in like an undisclosed location, and I had to remember what state this was in. Yeah, apparently a police officer came in to see what was going on because what they were doing like a promotion fight. I think it was like either wrestling or it was a MMA fight. What they were doing was illegal, and the loophole that they saw was uh they couldn't exactly do MMA fights. They could do like scheduled or orchestrated, like things like WWE kind of fights. Yeah, and as long as they were able to do that, they could carry on with what they're doing. But if not, what they were doing was illegal, and they would have to arrest them. I think the logic was uh, there had to be a conclusion. Yeah, because if it was just like a free for all and it was like an actual competition, it's akin to like human cockfighting. They could been arrested on the spot. So having that kind of yep that mentality of like thinking on the spot, like hopping from place to place, trying to I guess go outside the rules or to in order to protect this product that you've cultivated. Yeah, it kind of you can see how that carries into MMA nowadays, and people really judging his business practices. But you kind of understand I guess where it comes from, but and and I think that's why people were pretty much okay with it. Especially what there were talks with Khabib trying to get a private jet from yeah like out of some way
Could
with
be.
the Vladimir Putin to head to the U.S. or for Tony to come from the U.S. to Russia in order to fight. Yeah, I don't know what's happening there, but basically it was just as like an out of the box way to get the fight to happen. Yeah, they would have to find a way to get the fight going on because no other sports was going on when the quarantine started. So he's just being like balls to the wall, like no holds barred with this approach is it's kind of common practice with the UFC. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's how they exactly what we've been talking about this whole time, like Dana and the Fertitas back in the day. The UFC has never been a promotion that's going to take no for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like when it was getting compared to human cockfighting and stuff like that, they don't care. They're going to keep pressing forward with their agenda,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess it works both ways. You know, it's gotten them to where they are now. But now when you're you know, working with ESPN and you have a deal with them, sometimes you kind of do need to take no for an answer because
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of representing more than yourself at this point. You're not representing only the UFC, but Disney is also involved with it, which
Yeah.
is probably why they ended up calling it, just to kind of save their reputation at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of my take on it.
Mm-hmm.
So like for me, you have that one perspective that I'm thinking about, which is the business perspective, right? For me, look, what Bellator, I don't know if one did it, like, you know, all of these promotions have pretty much canceled most of their fights or upcoming pay-per-views because of this whole COVID-19 business. And then you see the UFC, it's like, nope, we're gonna get this event going. And for me, I didn't understand it as a fan because like I wanted to see Khabib versus Tony. We all wanted to see Khabib versus Tony for I don't know what 4 years
Mm-hmm.
now.
Yeah,
It made no sense to me because like what are you gonna do? You're gonna expect people to buy the pay-per-view for Tony versus Justin? Maybe, but it's not the same excitement and the same, you know, I don't know, the greatest fight in the history, which they've obviously trailered for this fight. And why don't you just like, you know, wait till what, September? That's what the rumored return is going to be for this. Hopefully, we'll see about that. At the same time, it's kind of like, yeah, it's all about business for them. But then, you know, you think about these fighters are people, they have families as well. Of course, the governor of California is going to like, you know, leech into this and be like, okay, this is not going to happen. Of course, secrecy has to happen, but it makes no sense. Why would you want this event to still happen? Because I don't know, you want to be different. You still want to be like the number one promotion in MMA. You still are, but that's not the same event that me, you know, Perry Punch or G probably expected, right? From
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do see
yeah,
that. I do see
I
what you
agree with
mean.
that.
Yeah. But I think that's what people like about Dana. I, I think he got more respect, but despite the 249 falling through, gaining more respect because of the lengths he was going to go. Whether or not you agree with how he carried it out, whether or not you agree with his methods, uh, I just wonder if that's if people are going to miss that kind of edginess, that kind of I guess, yeah, the kind of sneakers approach to the MMA business. If it's going to stay, or with new management, whether or not that's going to, yeah, or we're not going to see that as much, or if the entire nature of MMA will ever be the same.
I have a question. What do you guys think as far as um, like in general, other than this COVID-19 situation we're facing, outside of that, like in the past, do you think they've been like what do you think it's been secrecy in the UFC as well, like even before this whole thing happened? What are your thoughts on
Oh
that?
yeah, oh yeah, it's common practice.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
agree. It depends on it's a level of secrecy though, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it depends because like well, what I don't know this event. I don't know Valentina versus JoJo. We don't know where it's gonna be. When we don't know exactly when it's gonna be, and then kind of like then they reveal it slowly and gradually. So this is a different type of secrecy. But in general, yeah, I agree with I guess G as well when it comes to talking about like there has been secrecy. It just depends on the level of it because this is a different type of level. You can't you know unveil the place because it's going to get shut down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
like I think in general you have, that's a good question for sure. There's always been some type of secrecy, but depending on how much, right, and how vulnerable the situation
Mm-hmm.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they've been reluctant to like kind of let things go too early. They kind of keep things close to their chest
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
until till like the last minute. Basically, is kind of what I've noticed over the years. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's what I'd say about it.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I think it works though because like I don't know about you guys, but like when I get that announcement, I'm super pumped. I'm
Yeah.
putting that in my calendar. I'm getting another shift. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's personally me as a fan.
Yeah.
But like this is a totally different thing. Like I think like what we said. Like besides COVID-19, it's hard to ignore that part because it's a really big chunk of why this whole event or events in general are affected and how people go about it. I think like what G said. Like people do praise Dana. It's hard because like for me, it's I have to think about everything. I gotta think about the fighters. How it's not safe for them to go to this. I don't know any type of freaking island right now to fight because of what's going on. I care about them, but at the same time, I also care about the business, right? And so like
Mm-hmm.
it's hard sometimes just to think about like, do I really praise this man or do I think that it's stupid because I wanted to see Khabib versus Tony? Like I don't know about you, Perry Punch, but that's just personally how I feel about the
Oh
situation.
yeah, oh yeah. I've been wanting to see that one. That's the fight to make. Any real fight fan, that's the fight to make right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's
It's
why
good
they
to. It's good.
didn't. Sorry,
Go ahead.
keep going. Oh, I said
Oh,
that's
I was
why
just
they
gonna
didn't
say.
disclose the location. Like they disclosed it pretty
Mm-hmm.
early on.
Yeah,
So
Right.
and I'm just happy at the end of the day. Or I mean, now who knows? There probably might not even be a Ferguson and Gaethje fight. There's probably no reason to at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just happy that Dana White has also like kind of expressed interest in and having that fight down in the future because I think that's what we were worried about, and that was also pushing us towards like giving the UFC the pressure to make the fight happen now because a lot of us were worried
mm.
that they're gonna make the McGregor fight next, but
Oh my
since they
god,
were kind of
no.
willing
Like,
to do the interim fight, yeah, since they were
let's
gonna do the interim fight, I feel
uh
like they're willing
yeah.
to do this in September, maybe. At least I think we all hope that.
Yeah, and I think like with Perry Punch, that it's like first of all, no offense to Conor McGregor or anybody, like no offense, like you are not in line right now to make that fight.
Yeah, yeah,
I've had people online literally tell me, that it's Conor. He's gonna replace Khabib. He's gonna replace Tony. I'm like, first of all, Tony, I really feel bad for him because he deserves this fight more than anybody. And Khabib has worked his way up as well. So obviously they were supposed to meet 4 years ago. I actually bought a ticket 2 years ago to see them in Brooklyn. So you imagine how I feel
Mm-hmm.
about the situation. And like with Perry said, like, is it worth it? Can we just wait till September? I agree. I agree with that. Like you shouldn't have tried to save this event personally.
Mm-hmm. Right. So let's switch the topic to I guess understanding where the secrecy comes from. Uh, yeah, I understand where I guess Dana comes from because he understands fighting, and so that's why I want to take it to I guess secrecy in martial arts studios, I guess understanding with secrecy between dojos, fighting styles, and all that stuff. Now
um go ahead.
with fighting, with secrecy between martial artists, it's always about I guess keeping to yourself to make sure that people don't know what you're doing. Yeah, it's all about I guess security. It's a means of security to make sure that your fighting style cannot be compromised or copied by someone else, and someone's taking all the credit or diluting the secrets of your fighting style, so that people can, I guess, pick at it pick at it, and then eventually take it over, and the person who did so will end up, reigning supreme over you, and people will no longer take your classes. So maybe he comes from. I'm thinking that either he comes from understands MMA and keeping things close to your chest from that standpoint, and that's why he's able to understand how to market it. Yeah, maybe being close to that culture makes them understand of how they run their things, or maybe it could be another way that or another reason why he's the businessman he is, the type of businessman he is. But what do you think?
Monique, you want
Uh,
to go ahead on this one?
okay. I was gonna ask you, but I will go ahead on that one.
Okay.
basically, honestly, overall, I think Dana White is a businessman first. I've heard a lot of people have mixed feelings about what he's done in different organizations and different promotions. The strategic ways, whether they be I guess more edgy, like G said, but at the same time, I think that I don't know if he just thinks about the fighters. I think he just thinks about the organization as a whole. I don't think he thinks about the fighters because I've seen a lot of fighters get disrespected. No offense to Dana White because I know he follows me online, but with Demetrius Johnson, I've never seen a freaking trade in my life. Like, you know what I mean? And then DJ gets traded for Ben Askren. Ben Askren. No offense to Ben Askren, but you lost against Damian Maya. We knew you were gonna lose. Okay, but like at the same time, I don't think he does care because he didn't respect DJ. He had so many title defenses, pretty much number one in title defenses, and he never got any cut from that. So I think personally, just from speaking from what I believe in my heart, that he just cares about the business, and I don't think it has anything to do with the fighters, personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think, Perry?
Well, I mean, I think that it's a little bit of like like his distrust with the media in the first place. I think that's a big cause of the secrecy. Is like, I mean, we all it's like well known the whole Helwani and Dana White beef. How at
Right.
that event where Helwani broke that news. But I also think it has to do with their approach to maybe doing business as far as like making fights goes and things like that. I know. I mean, even Dominic Cruz came out last week and
Mm-hmm.
he was talking about Sean Shelby, how he kind of creates a fight between the fighters and then steps out of the way and lets them kind of start bickering back and forth, and then that's how he makes the fight. But he kind of offers them an unofficial fight, and it kind of tricks them into thinking that it's like a real offer, and then he kind of waits to see if there's going to be a beef between that, is what it sounded like from Cruz, and
Mm.
then they go from there. So I think I don't know how to put it exactly, but I think that their style of making fights. I mean, you've even heard it with Nate Diaz, how he like they'll break a fight on Instagram, and next thing you know, you got Diaz putting out on Twitter like, I never signed this. They haven't even called me. And so I think some of
Right.
the secrecy comes from that. Like, I think their approach in making fights is where the secrecy comes from. But also to go off of what G said, Dana White was also a former boxing trainer in
Mm.
Boston, I believe. So you're probably right to some degree on that too. Like, your like trades and techniques and stuff like that, like at jujitsu gyms, MMA gyms, they kind of is how do I say it? It's a what's
It
the
comes
word?
with the gig. That this kind of the
Yeah,
secrecy, like this kind of
and
mentality,
certain yeah
it carries over to other
yeah, and
professions.
certain people like like Cobrina and who else? Like those big jujitsu names like who's the coach of Dylan Dennis, the former coach? Do you
Oh
Oh
guys
dear
yeah.
remember?
God. No, I don't. No offense to Dylan Dennis or anything. I don't follow him. Personally, like I just think it's like all about business, and they try to like use the fighters as puppets in a way. Because it's like we're gonna break this fight, and this is what's gonna happen right now.
Yeah, I
You,
think that's the main thing as far as where the secrecy comes from because there's never really pen to paper a lot of the time until like the last minute. So I think they're like waiting on breaking news and stuff like that because it's not actually official yet, you know?
Yeah, that
that's
makes
like
sense.
So
that's crazy though because like I think that I guess like I'm trying to think of not the business perspective because I do have that perspective most of the time, but I think about the fighters and their perspective, and like this is their livelihood in a way. Some people only have this one job, but they did sign up for this. I will say that they did sign up and knowing that like they're probably not going to get, unfortunately, what they deserve. But at the same time, I think that I don't think that necessarily the UFC has a lot of fighters' interests at heart. There's too many fighters that I've known that have complained, and it's just kind of sad in a way. No offense to the organization, I just think that all they care about right now is making money, and all they care about right now is staying on top of the MMA world, and that's why they decided to go with this UFC 249 dub main event.
Oh, and side note, I think Marcelo Garcia is who you were thinking of.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was just gonna say that like each gym, like those two different gyms, they have different techniques and stuff.
Yeah.
And then like, the individual like owns that technique. So if you're Dylan Dennis, you can't go out and teach his professor's techniques
Mm-hmm.
without at
Hmm.
least getting his permission or putting his name under it too.
Yeah.
Like you can't just take
Right.
it and put it as your own. So I was just
Mm-hmm.
saying that's kind of what you were saying, right, G?
In terms of secrecy, I think that yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
What are you
in
saying?
gyms and stuff like that. Like each gym has their own techniques. You don't want it to be like a universal thing.
Right, and I also think though, like even though that is a huge factor, it's also about like people have different game plans when they go in the ring, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we've seen it. What Israel Adesanya versus Yoel Romero. We didn't think that this fight was going to go out this way because Israel had a freaking game plan. He thought that Yoel was going to come forward to him, like so. I even though it's important to think about like what they do in the dojo and maybe if that's what makes them the fighter that they are. I think that game plans are a huge topic when it comes to that. Personally,
Mm. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and to continue with this, yeah, it reminded me of, I guess, something that my jujitsu teacher talked about, like, I guess trying to get students from one dojo, like visiting their dojo, trying to dojo, a gym, yeah, their jujitsu gym, yeah, and I guess trying to get members trying to get members to go to the gym that he comes from. Yes, it's. I think they have a name for that. Like I think either squatters, scouts, or something like that. Like
mm,
yeah,
Probably
yeah,
scouts or something.
yeah.
yeah,
Gym A goes to Gym B and then gets their members to try to go to Gym A, like taking their students away from them. It's like a really harsh practice.
Yeah, definitely. So you got to keep things close to your chest to some degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah. I think that like obviously for social media purposes and to engage with their fans, they have a few clips here and there, but
Mm-hmm.
they obviously don't reveal everything that they're doing. It's just mostly like a trailer. I think pretty sure if like let's just say I was to fight Perry Punch right now, and like I see his videos, I can literally see his tape from his other fights
Mm-hmm.
right now, and like I think that they would probably rely on that as well as like a solid game plan, hopefully. And so definitely they can't reveal everything though. I definitely agree with that point.
Mm.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, let's move the topic to social media. So for social media, that kind of like puts a nail in the coffin for secrecy because of the very nature of it, and yeah, and we're kind of like the main culprits for that. But I wonder if the way social media is growing, yeah, the way you see the trends of how I guess more open people are with more live streams, and I think people are going into live streams more now because of the quarantine. Now, I wonder if that will be, I guess that will be the norm post quarantine. Fingers crossed, post quarantine. So yeah, I was wondering if if secrecy is going to be a thing in the past as there's going to be more evolution in the way people fight. Yeah, there's not a lot of like secrecy when it comes to I guess understanding how to fight in MMA, unless there's like a new variable tossed into the techniques that changes everything. And I might talk about that in the future. But do you think that will I guess put an end to secrecy or just cause a little bit less of it? And maybe that will be the I guess justification for why Dana I guess conducts business the way he does.
Hey Barry, you got something to say about that?
Yeah. I would go ahead and think that as far as these lives go and stuff like that, I think they are kind of realizing that it's a little, I mean, maybe in some ways easier than like their standard way of doing interviews and stuff like that. I mean, you just literally pop on Face or not FaceTime, Instagram Live, and then you like screen record it or however they're doing. But it seems like it's less steps, it's more convenient. You don't need like to be in an office or like a whole production studio to get these interviews. Kind of like the Helwani show. It's kind of a big production. But I think that they might be realizing that they might be spending a little too much money on getting these interviews when you
Mm.
could just put out the same kind of quality content from a simple Instagram live like screen recording. So I think it might change that a little bit as far as how interviews go in the future. But I
Mm.
think there probably will be some of the same lines of secrecy, just as far as, if a fighter's been in talks with one of the matchmakers and the matchmaker requests for him not to come out and break the news yet, or not wanting to talk about their contracts and how many fights they have in their new deals. I think that kind of stuff will probably remain the same, just because that's kind of like the baseline. It's kind of like already
Mm.
been that way. So I don't see how like maybe the different set of interviews would what's the word would like result in them breaking more like top secret news. I
Mm-hmm.
think that it probably remain the same, but as far as the way interviews go, I think it will probably change once this whole thing's over.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I agree because like I've seen like whoever has Instagram right now, you've seen your favorite fighters, like they're paired up with some other fighter and they're talking about something, and it's too easy right now.
Mm.
And at the same time, like what Perry Punch said, like it's not they're not gonna reveal everything. Everybody has non-disclosure agreements, like everybody does.
Well, almost everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, pretty much over. Like when it comes to the fight game, hopefully they would have the non-disclosure agreement if they really want to keep that secrecy. And I think it's important because, uh, I think that it's not gonna like. I don't think many fighters. I don't think many fighters that I've thought of right now have actually revealed something important, or they were cryptic about it. Even athletes, not even talking about the fight game, talking about athletes, like they've been really cryptic about what they want to do, but they can't really say anything at that point. I think that the interviews like Instagram Live, especially, they give people, especially fighters, the chance to talk to other fighters that are they're friends with. Like that's personally what I see a lot of the time, and then pretty much discuss a topic that's not involved when it comes to their fights, and maybe just technique and like what they like. I don't know, their favorite submission, things like that. Like I've seen Instagram live topics. After this quarantine, I think that Perry Punch is right. I think that because everything that is revealed right now, and like how easy it is to get the fighters to be in the media, and in a sense with social media, and engage with the fans. I personally want interviews to be more like that. I only know a few select, I guess you could say, what, either journalists, broadcasters, commentators that have actually encouraged the engagement rather than just the interview, if that makes sense to you guys.
Yeah.
I'm not going to name
Yeah.
names right now, but I'm going to like pretty much say like I think that engagement is going to be a huge factor after quarantine, and not just like, oh, you're going to ask these fighters questions and then you're going to answer back and you're not going to engage with the fans as much, because Instagram Live has literally just flooded with everything that's going on without MMA.
Yeah.
And that's all I have to say.
Yeah. There's
I see what you
actually,
mean.
I think there's more interviews too, by the way.
Yeah. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
definitely are.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
way more.
Yeah. Speaking of
I
interviews,
mean,
what that reminded me of was when Eddie Bravo comes on Joe Rogan's podcast to talk about things. When he's talking about, I guess shooting things with guys. I think like what's it called, the fight companions. Yeah, he could sometimes spill the beans on. Whether Tony has like another fight scheduled, or if there's like everything like that. I think it was one where yeah, he spilled the beans on it, like an official decision that Tony had, whether it's like fighting on a certain date, or if he has like a injury or something like that. I don't know if it was with an injury, so it was just with a certain fight. Yeah, and yeah, you can have some kind of like oops moments, hot mic moments, where people will say things unexpectedly, and it kind of like gets a story going. Yeah, and you see a lot of, and I think that's like the cause of a lot of fake news coming out of there, and that's like the main practice in MMA Twitter. And
Yeah.
you kind of see some of that where uh, you like get these rumors coming out where it comes to a point where fighters have to either step in to say no, this is not what's happening, or it comes out with from Dana where he has to address it. Oh yeah, that reminds me of when. Also reminds me of when Ariel was talking to Joanna. I think it was after her. I
Oh,
think.
don't talk to me about that. That's sad.
Oh yeah, because. Yeah.
You got me on that one.
Oh yeah, yeah. She was. You know, she was. He was talking to Joanna about like her coach that left, and I think yeah, at that moment she didn't know about it. Yeah, and that's yeah. I think that kind of like adds fuel to the fire of why Dana doesn't like conversing with Ariel. But I
Look,
think
like that's the thing. Like Ariel, no offense to you because you're from Montreal, Canada. I gotta root for you in a sense because you're Canadian. However, that literally turned me off.
oh
Ariel Hawani. No offense to anybody who likes him. It's just like those kind of questions. Like I don't think it was necessarily necessary at the time. You know, after her fight, and when everything's just so like, I don't even want to know what happens after the fight and what you're feeling, you know, and like how your headspace is. And I just think that that was kind of just like, wait, you just drove her off that
yeah,
interview. No offense
yeah.
to
People
everybody
were
who likes
on
him.
him like after that. It's like people sending
I'm one of
hate
those
comments
people.
on him. It was
No, I
crazy.
didn't do that, but like everybody else, like I think whoever did that, I think that was kind of either immature, but I can understand because social media is that kind of platform.
Right.
Like I just personally try to not, you know, I don't support him just like it just doesn't make sense to me why you would say something like that right
Right.
after she does that. It's a very like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, okay, well, you knew that it was kind of an insensitive topic
Uh huh.
to talk about. Personally, I don't know. We're not gonna dive into it, but like that's just how I. When you said that, I'm like, oh, I know what you're gonna say, G.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
His
So.
sources are almost too good, like too good. You know, they like get way too much information to him, and then
Hmm.
he can't help it. But I think he's trying to be like I think if you like he would put the way he would put it is he's trying to be a good journalist. He gets the information, he's putting it out there, but he does, you know, he asks some of the hard questions, some of like the controversial questions. So it kind of comes with his territory and his style of working, I guess,
It makes no
covering
sense
the sport.
because like he has his own show. Like this is a post fight interview. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like he
Yeah,
can literally, you guys know, he can literally ask that question if you wanted Joanna on his show.
Oh yeah.
That's,
exactly.
So yeah. Well. Yeah.
I'm
That's
glad we
just.
agree on that.
Yeah. I think yeah, that's just like yeah, that's just a symptom of MMA Twitter. I don't know if it's going to stop. Whether it's that's just a change in the culture, maybe this will be the change in the culture that causes a change in the culture, or if it's just some other thing. And I think that'll lead on to my next topic of Fighter Island.
Ooh.
Yeah, I've
It's
been
like Survivor, man. Like
yeah.
that's
I know.
Yeah, I've been wanting to talk about this one. Yeah, just like the whole idea of Fighter Island. I think it'll be just like it'll be like Vegas, but more like exotic. Like whatever happens on the island stays on the island in some ways. Yeah, it
mm.
just yeah. I hope it's real, but if it is, I just want to know what it will be like. What will I guess just the idea of having an island. What's that gonna do for the sport? I mean, if it's going to be passed down from Dana to another, yeah. Just, what did you guys think of Fighter Island when you heard about it?
All right, Perry Punch. I'm gonna give you the floor for this one.
All right, I was gonna give it to you, but you want me
Oh
to?
wow, okay. I mean, like honestly, like I'm just gonna be a little bit playful about this and not actually be serious. And
Mm-hmm.
just like when you
Yeah.
say about Fighter Island, I think of Mario Kart, my favorite freaking N64 game right there. I think like okay, so it just feels like that. And it could maybe, you know, it could maybe if you want to market it to another market, let's just say I don't know, gaming or anything like that.
Yeah,
I
you
don't think
could.
you could. If the UFC, if anything could, if anybody can do it, it's the UFC.
Yeah.
Not saying that it's going to happen or anything, or it's a good idea. I'm just saying like there's definitely different avenues you can go with it. I don't know if any other sports promotion, especially in MMA, would do something like that
Mm,
personally, because like I just think that UFC was like for them they just really want to salvage that event. I don't think it's hard. Like, what would they market? Because it's COVID-19. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what would they actually market for that island? Just like deserted, and there's like international fighters that can fly in, things like that. But I think it could be fun. I'm not saying it's not a bad idea. Like, it's just I think it could be fun. That's just
mm-hmm.
like how I see it personally. I'm just having a little bit of fun when it
Right.
comes to this
Yeah,
fighter island.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Okay, sorry.
Oh, did you want to
Oh
say
no, no,
something?
no. I was just thinking something, but go ahead.
Okay. No, what I was gonna say is like I think that I actually heard something recently how that the UFC kind of regulates their own fights that are like international, especially something like this.
Mm-hmm.
They're apparently like they're going to be act as their own commission, or they're going to be responsible. It's not going to be like a California commission or a New York commission. Have you
Mm-hmm.
guys heard anything about that?
I think I did. Yeah, and I think and to your point, yeah, I think that's like the final that's like the I guess a problem to solve with this island because of having to go through hoops and bounds to get things done in each state, like taxes and all that stuff and regulations with the unified rules. I think with a fighter island, I like to like construct theories about that maybe there could be a change in rules, but with having your own island. But I wonder if it's going to be like within U.S. territory. If not, then that point is moot. But if it is, will the U.S. have like any say on it?
Yeah, so I mean,
I mean,
I think it
USA
could
have any say
be
on it?
a little bit of both. Like it could be like good and bad, I guess, because if they're going to be regulating the event on their own, then they don't really have to worry about, the California commissioner coming in and making a fuss to the higher ups of ESPN and Disney and things like that. So I think that could be good, but also it might be a little bit more difficult because they got to go ahead and bring in all the staff, like regulate everything, probably deal with more things than they used to. And then on top of like taking on the task of flying all these fighters in and taking care of all that stuff for them as well. So I think it's probably going to be a lot of work if I'm being honest. And but if I'm also being objective, then it's probably also for right now, it's probably the only way too for them to go ahead and move on with holding events. And that's probably why Dana's kind of saying like he's still promising that Fighter Island's going to be a thing, even
Yeah,
though like they
I
just
think
took
that
it away.
he's just trying. I think he's trying to make it a thing, and I think that's it's about their priorities, right? Like the
Yeah.
priority is
Yeah,
probably right now. UFC wants to move ahead with certain fights or pay per views, and Fighter Island, exactly what Perry said just right now. Like it's like
yeah,
a lot more work. Legal, like marketing could be a little bit easy, but you have to explain to people what this Fighter Island is all about. At the same time, you gotta get these fighters on board, which most of them, I would think that because they want to fight, would be on board with that. And obviously, like they could fly to there, drive to there, whatever, wherever wherever it's gonna be. And at the same time, I just think that like if they really want to head with this, they have to realize it's gonna be a lot of work, and it's not just from one aspect; it's from many aspects.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you guys feel. Like I think it'd be kind of fun, but I don't know if I would take it seriously. Like personally, just because it's kind of it's weird. It's a new concept to me. When I think of Fighter Island, I think of Survivor. I think of Mario Kart. Like I said, it's very like you would have to literally explain to me what this is about, either marketing wise, PR wise. That's just how I feel personally.
I just find it funny that Mario Kart is your frame of reference.
No,
Just
because it's
out
like
there.
all these different islands on Mario Kart. Like I think of like Fighter Island. Like all right, like it's another one.
Yeah, a lot of people
So
took it with with Mortal Kombat, which I can understand.
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
specifically the
That's another good
movie.
reference. Yeah.
Yeah. The legal
I kind of
aspect will
think
be a
though.
nightmare.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to go off of what Monique said, like I think it would be probably a better sell for the fans on the idea of like just creating a fighter island. I mean, when you minus the whole coronavirus thing,
Mm.
like if we just were to hear one day wake up and hear that the UFC Dana White they secured an island and they're going to go ahead and start holding events here, or maybe they're going to do a one-off on a big event kind of thing. I think that would make it like a huge selling point, for sure, just because it's so different and it's like exciting, Fighter Island kind of thing. But with this whole coronavirus thing, I think it's still a little bit of a push, just because people are also tight on money right now, and if they're
oh
planning on
yeah.
holding like pay-per-views like UFC 250 on there, um, it's still going to be dealing with other side factors like the coronavirus, people's financial situation, things like that. But I think
It's
it is still a good seller, and and I'm intrigued personally. You know what I mean? I want to see this event
Yeah,
on
no,
Fighter
Perry
Island.
Punch. You got me on that. Okay, this is a weird analogy, but I'll make it anyway. I feel like you guys might understand. Okay, so anybody that watches The Bachelor or The Bachelorette know that the point of it is to get a winner at the end of the day. So like, but they also have a side show which is called Bachelor in Paradise, where people can actually like pretty much the people that didn't win, they hook up together and then they hopefully find love. So it's kind of like similar in a way to UFC because you have these events that you host in different states, different countries, or whatever. But then you're like, you know what? Maybe we can do a side event. And I'm telling you, The Bachelor in Paradise sells pretty well. Okay, like so,
Right.
I'm saying that right now, like exactly what Perry said. Like he's like very, into this event. I am as well. I think they have to do it correctly. I think they can wait till the summer. Personally, if they were going to actually, start up talking about it, because we're supposed to be talking about fights in general and like how they're going to be held. And like, what fights are going to happen? Is it going to be Tony versus Justin? Is it going to be Tony versus Khabib in all the way in September? Is it going to be Connor versus Khabib? I hope not. No offense to anybody who wants it.
Yeah,
We
I'm
just
with
don't
you.
know, right? We just that's
Yeah.
that's the main priority right now, not the Fighter Island. That's the different priority right now.
I see. Uh, I would say that just maybe Fight Island as a concept. It could be like something like for special occasions. Yeah, but I think what they did, maybe they had like the same mentality of like Fighter Island, like they did with the Indian reservations. Maybe it was just like one of the other options that they had of like a plan B in case like quote unquote Fighter Island didn't go through, and they did that because they couldn't. It was like less regulated than any other arena they could go into. So maybe that's why they tried to skirt it that way. And yeah, so yeah, with legal aspects, but now with that, I wonder how else they're going to, I guess, conduct business like on an island. Oh yeah, like with this new with this new property. Because think about it, they also have to do things with with judging, with locations, like with building stuff. Well, not with building regulations, but with judging. Like how are they gonna, I guess, handle that? They may have their own judges. I don't know if they do have their own judges. Maybe they have to go like from state to state, from country to country. But how are they going to handle with that? Unless they're going to do that panel of judges that Joe Rogan's been talking about.
Oh, Joe
Yeah.
Rogan. Oh yeah, Perry Bunch, you got the floor first.
Okay. So, I mean, yeah, I think that. Wait, go ahead and tell me more about the panel of judges Joe Rogan's been talking about because I have missed that.
Yeah,
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 he
Greg, come
says.
on.
Yeah, he said. Yeah, he was talking about why the current way of judging. It kind of we got it from boxing so that it was like a nice copy paste system for MMA. But he sees that since there's like a lot of things that go into MMA, that it's not exactly sufficient enough as a system to judge MMA, which is why he suggested either an open panel of judges or something like streaming panel of judges. Like you get someone from Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, from boxing, from Taekwondo, from Sambo, so on and so forth. And you get a different kind of scoring system on top of that to just to get the correct results, to get accurate results. But I think, there could be
Okay.
problems with that too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he also mentioned how like I think I've heard him before say he doesn't want the judges to be able to like be in the arena to hear the sound and hear the commentary. They should be like locked in a room too and like watching the stream with no sound, right?
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys heard
Basically.
about that.
here's the
Yeah.
thing. Like, I was thinking about idealistic concepts when it comes to that, because when where the judges sit, and I've been to a UFC live event where I was pretty close to the floor. I know that where they sit is not freaking ideal at all. Like when it comes to like seeing different angles, and so obviously
Mhm.
people can say things about judging individually based on events. I do think it's a great idea if like you said, Dana, whoever has said like maybe they should be in a room or maybe they should be watching from their computer at home where there's different angles where they can see, because we've definitely been through those events where you're just like, why the hell did you make this person win? Like, it doesn't make sense, right? At the
Yeah.
same time, I think
Right.
from a practical standpoint it makes sense. I think that, but at the same time, I don't know, maybe from an entertainment standpoint where you're supposed to have I don't know, 3 judges right there and then judging the event. Maybe, I don't know, I don't personally care about that. I care about good results. I care about fair results. And if we're doing, I don't know, Fighter Island judges, we can definitely get a bunch of them to either stream, watch it from the TV, whatever it is, right, and judge, because I think that's fair, because we get more angles than they do.
Yeah.
Personally, you can
Yeah.
see it at live events, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It makes me wonder. Yeah, and I talked about it with the sibling. No, it was a sibling rivalry podcast. Yeah, it was like unwritten rules in the unwritten rules episode. We talked about how the judges in Houston went during the Reyes Jones card. Some of them, I think one of them wasn't even looking at the screen when the fight was going on.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So yeah, there could be something. There could be something to that. Yeah, and that'll be like done behind closed doors of how they evaluate that. So
You think about it, but like even in football, right? You have offensive, defensive coordinators right at the freaking skybox, where they have all the different angles of the game. So that's just how I'm analyzing it, and maybe it's a good idea.
Right.
No, that's a good point too. I mean, those people too, like the offensive and defensive coordinators sitting in the skybox, they are like, the reason why they're up there is exactly what you said, for a better angle, for a better viewpoint, because they're all about strategy, finding new ways to win the game and stuff. So I think that if judges could kind of have the same like, watch it from indoors, not as much sound, and just be looking at it more from like a zoomed out experience, they can kind of see, they'll probably be able to see more, because also they're not going to be necessarily hearing the commentary. Maybe they could like mute the cast as well, so that they don't have to hear it. Because sometimes, I think it might be a little inevitable. You got like MMA fighters calling these events. You got like Joe Rogan. They all have connections to certain people. DC from AKA. So I think that's inevitable to kind of ask them to, or it's hard to ask them to not be biased. I think they know that, and they're trying not to be. But at the end of the day, it might creep in a little bit with some of their fights.
Right.
So it's probably also in their best interest to like not listen to the commentary, be by themselves,
right,
look at it from like a zoomed out experience.
And that's like, it's all about, like, for me, judges are about like what you said, Perry, pretty much like a functional like aspect, not like commentators are a different story. It's about probably their personality, and like people like them. DC Bisping, shout out to Bisping. I used to intern for him. Like like different people out there. They're there for the personality. And I'm just saying, people don't usually think about like their skills and like all that, because they're just being like biased towards what they think of the fight. And I think that that's fine. We can have commentators down in the fight center, but like in terms of judges, I think that like Perry said, like that's a whole soundproof way of really just concentrating on the fight and not anything else. And as much as I love the crowd interaction, because I've been at a live event before, but as a judge, I would want to be as objective as possible. But not all judges are like that. We've had our controversy about judges, I guess, on MMA Twitter and other forums. So that's a different story, though, right? So
Yeah, politics within the fighting world. I'll talk about that in a future episode. But yeah, that'll be another thing with this Fighter Island this Fighter Island concept. Yeah, it's going to be much more complicated than anything that would happen if between state commissions. Yeah, because can you imagine the shit show that happened when I think John Jones tested positive for like a lingering case of the drug that he took. Yeah, they had to pull some strings with the CSAC to get it sanctioned in California, after they had to move everything from Nevada to California. So I can only imagine what will happen here. It could be like a one stop here. And so so yeah, I can just only imagine. So to wrap this up, I'll have one last question, just to talk about secrecy in the fighting world, and I think I guess I'll talk about it briefly about politics. So it's kind of like a meme that the MMA promotions favor other fighters. Yeah, you can see that with certain people. That's why they keep other fighters in the dark. Yeah, I know that with the flyweight division, that was the case That's why they were kind of some fighters were in the dark of whether or not their own division was going to stay put or not. He says that their fight the division wasn't even going anywhere, and he also said that uh yeah, that certain fighters weren't going to go away, but yeah, yes, the secrecy that mixes with politics is a kind of a dirty business, and I think that's why uh with MMA is no exception. That's why people kind of like look down on it, like frown upon it. Sometimes even people in their own community, within MMA Twitter and the MMA community at large. So, what do you think about? I guess having this kind of favoritism. We kind of talked about this with, I think it was like unwritten rules or viewership. Yeah, with how some fighters are favored over others. Uh, how do you think politics will evolve with whether or not it goes with a Dana till he retires or and someone else comes in, or will it always be the same with fighters being favored over another? Um, uh,
Okay, Perry.
Um, I'd go ahead and say that, first off, I think it has to do with the ratings. At the end of the day, that's kind of what creates the bias. You know what I mean? When they see a guy like I think the latest one is Sean O'Malley.
I love
When they
him.
see a guy, yeah,
mm-hmm,
when they see a guy who can just like nail the ratings every time,
mm-hmm,
that kind of leads towards the bias a little bit. But as far as like, I think it's two sided. Like I'll use McGregor as an example. It got McGregor to where he like to get the double champ status. He didn't necessarily have to fight like his way to a title shot in the lightweight division. He kind of just like through his popularity and his success at featherweight, they just kind of gave him the opportunity after Diaz.
yeah,
So, I mean, it worked for him there, but then at the same time, all the favors kind of it almost put him in a little bit of an impossible situation to where he is now. Can you guys still hear me good?
yep,
Yeah.
Okay. So it kind of got him to a little bit of an impossible situation now where he's all the competition he's facing is, I mean, in a lot of people's eyes, very, very tough, almost unwinnable competition. Like you got Khabib, Gaethje, Ferguson. These are like killers,
yeah,
and they're a lot. I mean, even Masvidal, talks all the time
Yeah,
with
love
McGregor.
him.
yeah,
So I think some of the bias thought McGregor almost pushed him too far. You know what I mean?
right,
And
I
so
agree.
there's like a fine line. Like I think that they gotta be careful with some of it because in a way, they made McGregor's career, and then they also kind of brought it down a little bit through all of that.
I
So
think
that's kind of my take.
I think that Perry has a good point because back then, when you remember when Connor was what the king of both divisions, it wasn't the
Yeah.
same. It wasn't the same, and you guys know what I'm talking about. Now you have what at least 5 potential fighters in that at least lightweight division, and even in featherweight, crazy fighters right there, right? And then, but at the same time, you have to look at that. It wasn't the same back then, and now, like you said, it's kind of like Connor didn't dig a grave, but because like you kind of have to be like, don't hate the player, hate the game. Well, the game means that a lot of different fighters are going up there in ranks, you know,
yeah,
and that's gonna affect what's gonna happen. And so, in terms of social media, I think that there's always gonna be some type of favoritism. I think, but I do think that like Sugar Sean O'Malley, what Masvidal, people like that have developed their own personality, have won fans over. That is also a certain type of like level of what I don't know Conor McGregor has done, but they're doing it in their own different way. So I still think that it's gonna be there.
mm-hmm,
Everybody knows that like Masvidal, like I guess apparently he wants to fight Usman, he wants to fight Conor, he's down for anything. Sugar Sean O'Malley, I've always loved him because of his personality. He's just freaking like authentic, and that's the whole point, right? It's like
mm-hmm.
social media is in your favor when you're authentic. Triple C is authentic, unfortunately. Like he's authentic.
Yeah,
Cringeworthy.
yeah,
It's the
but
same thing.
yeah, but I want to yeah, and I want to turn this conversation about politics towards yeah, well, yeah, it's if there is politics with how they favor some fighters, it's not really a well kept secret, but I think it's starting to get better with with people understanding, I guess where it comes from, or I guess, um, yeah, like secrecy behind it getting I guess better because people now know where I guess where their money is coming from, where whether they're going to be compensated, uh, whether they're going to be a favored for another fight. Uh, but I know that I guess in like a couple of years ago and before that, it wasn't always that way. I saw a video on from Miles Jury about like some things you might not know about the UFC, and and it was kind of a thing that we like kind of knew or had like an idea, but once he talked about it, that's when we figured it kind of like confirmed everything that we thought about the UFC and with MMA in general. There's no retirement plan. You don't know when your next fight's going to be. Whether you do well or not, they could cut you at any moment. We kind of knew about it because there's like higher ups that talk about it, like Joe Rogan. But do you think the secrecy with politics will get better? I think I already said that question. Do you think that it will get better as things become more open with and it kind of like goes with social media? Do you think that will like transfer into how the politics are with the UFC? And I think I'll leave this as the final question.
Yeah,
Okay.
Perry.
I mean, I think that it's almost getting I would say like how you were saying it wasn't always like this. I think this comes with like the evolution of the sport, I mean social media in general.
Yeah.
I think that fighters are almost being forced to go ahead and like be more involved in social media and be more present in social media in order to get the big fights. It's almost not enough these days to just be like really popular. Like you see it with a lot of the fighters who win a lot of fights, but they maybe aren't so interesting on social media. And those are the guys who have to win, put together like a 6 fight win streak, 5, 6 fight, 7 fight win streak in the division. And versus some of the guys who are really popular, like, I mean, if you think about it, Sean O'Malley he has what, like 3 fights in the UFC, 2 or 3?
Two.
Two, exactly. So, and people already kind of, he's been asked about Cejudo and things like that as well. So, I think that it may get worse, to answer your question. Like it may get more reliant upon social media. That's kind of like how the trend's been going over the years.
I agree
So
with
yeah,
Perry. I
yeah,
think that okay, so like you said, like I said, Sean O'Malley only has 2 fights. He only has 1 fight when it comes to like the Dana White Contender Series, and that wasn't even his most exciting fight. But people were talking about him way before then, and it's just sad because I don't want it to get worse, but I know it will in a sense because social media is such a big part in so many fighters, or like at least the popular fighters, especially their lives. And I know fighters like I'm not gonna name names, but they try to be kind of like Conor McGregor, right? And it kind of works for them because they're at least talked about in the community, and maybe that's what their point is. There's different ways to go about social media, and it's sad because I really like seeing the fighters that deserve it. The fighters that have, I don't know, like you said, have to win 6 fights in order for a title shot or something like that to get it. But unfortunately, the reality is that social media is only going to be booming. It's only going to be revolutioning. Like you're not even just talking about fighters in general. That concept is always going to be there. I don't think we're not going to see the end of it, at least in the next few years, right? So I agree with definitely Perry Punch about that. It's unfortunate, right? At the end of the day, because I think that as fans, we like to see fighters that would want to get that title shot, deserve to get that title shot, to get it on fair terms, but it's not fair at the end of the day. It's a business, right? And that's the whole
yeah.
point.
I see. All right.
One name that comes to mind real quick is Sandhagen. I mean, that guy has put together
Yes.
a huge list of names. I mean, maybe not top of the division, but he's got a great winning streak, and he's not really in the mix of a title shot necessarily. I mean, he's
Yeah.
probably not even like if you were to go down the list of the next three guys, they might give it to. I don't even think he would be in that list
Nope.
of the next three
Not top.
guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's so sad because it's all about how you market yourself, right? At
Yeah,
the end of the day, it's sad. I don't agree with it personally, but I agree with, like, like Sandhagen. I wanted him to fight. I believe, what was it, Frankie Edgar or somebody like that earlier, but that fight got canceled. I
yeah.
forgot, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, UFC is a business. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, and then last thing I'll say is, I mean, even with that Frankie Edgar fight, right? I don't think many fans were thinking that if he went ahead and won that fight, that it was for title contention for him. You know,
Right, and I
I
think
mean,
that
maybe it
Frankie,
was for
yeah,
Frankie, but
I love,
not
yeah,
for him.
exactly. And it's sad because you said it was for Frankie, and like that's the sad part. Because no offense, because I met Frankie, he's the nicest person in the whole world, but he definitely does not deserve that title shot. Corey Sandhagen does. We all know that, just based on rankings and records and stuff like that. But because everybody, loves or hates or whatever, knows about Frankie Edgar, he's gonna get that title shot. Jose Aldo against Triple C. Let's just talk about that because you already know that's not even fair compared to other
Yeah,
people in that division, right? So like that's the whole trend though, what it's leading to, because it's all about being marketable. And like I wish it was more about who next up, and
Mm,
it's not gonna be like that all the time for sure.
gotcha.
yeah. It's a combination between like it needs to not only make the most sense, but it has to also make the most business. Like whichever
Yes,
meets
yeah.
both of those the best, whichever fighter does, or whichever fight to makes that much sense. On both those categories, that's what they're gonna make every time. So
I think that's why DJ, like, remember why he got traded, because I think not many people that I guess were getting interested in the fight world, not many people liked the lightweight division. And that's the whole point where Perry Punch said, like, what's going to make the most money. I don't think many people, when it comes to MMA, they think about,
Mm,
the flyweight division. And it's unfortunate, but that's the reality of it, because at the end of the day, like I said, it's unfortunately a business and only a business.
yeah. Yeah, and I think I'll and I think I can continue this conversation about politics for another podcast, but I think I'll end it here. So this is it's a very interesting topic at that.
yeah,
So
I,
so thank you very much, guys, for coming in. I know things are tightening down with the quarantine, so I'm happy that you got the time to come over and do this episode.
yeah,
yeah,
no problem. And thanks for blowing up my DMs, G, because I needed that. I needed the extra motivation to get on here.
No problem, man. No problem. Yeah, and thank you again,
yeah.
Monique, for coming on.
Oh, thank you. I mean, like, obviously a pleasure always, G. And obviously, talking to Perry, I feel like we can talk all freaking day about this topic and just different topics about MMA. So I'm glad to make new friends, and I'm glad to be here. Perry Punch, I do follow him. I think he's at Perry Punch MMA, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not mistaken.
Yep.
And then is it Dainty Analysis we got there on Twitter, as well as my Twitter, which is at Monique Yip. And you can follow me at Unwrap Sports. I am the social media director there.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just plug everybody
Yep.
right now.
Yeah,
My
thank you.
ad handle is the Danty Man. Danty. Up in my name on Twitter is Danty Analysis. So yeah, when you can look it up on the Twitters